Here we go. So my name is Anne McGuire. I am the Assistant Director for Education and Outreach for the USCCB Secretariat of Pro-Life Activities. And Kat Lawless is the other wonderful lady on this webinar today. She is our Assistant Director for Pro-Life Communications. So I'm just going to go through a couple housekeeping tips right now and logistics. You all are already rock stars using the Q&A function, but we'll review it for the people who are just joining. So if you're having any issues with audio or your video, go to usccb.org/webex for some troubleshooting tips, or you can use the Q&A function, and our colleague Chris McCaffrey is on hand to help with those. For the Q&A, it depends on whether you're viewing directly in your internet window, your browser window, or if you've downloaded the software. So if you're in the internet browser window, hover over your screen and then look for this toolbar and the question mark. And then if you've downloaded the software for WebEx, go ahead and look off to the lower right corner of your screen for the Q&A feature. And a lot of you already have been using this, but just to refresh. And then if you have a question, go ahead and click select all panelists from the dropdown so that both Kat, Chris, and I can all see and then respond. More likelihood of somebody being able to see and catch your question. And then you type your question in here and just hit enter. Due to the number of people, we had a phenomenal response of people who registered. I think it was, last I checked, a little over 1,500. So we are not going to be able to probably get to all the questions. We'll do our best, and do our best to also kind of lump different questions together so that we can get as helpful as possible.
And just to add to what Anna is saying, if you do have any questions and for some reason we don't get to them, I'm just going to type in our email address, prolife@usccb.org, and send that here in the chat. So you can always save that email address, and then we can get back to you if your question is not addressed during the session.
Yeah. And that's all I have for logistics. So Kat, if you want to open us with prayer.
Sure, I'd be delighted. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O Blessed Mother, you received the good news of the incarnation of Christ, your Son, with faith and trust. Grant your protection to all mothers facing difficulties. Guide us as we strive to make our parish communities places of welcome and assistance for mothers in need. Help us to become instruments of God's love and compassion. Mary, Mother of the Church, graciously help us build a culture of life and a civilization of love, together with all people of goodwill, to the praise and glory of God, the Creator and Lover of life. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome to all of you who are just joining. We're so happy to be here. That prayer for pregnant mothers, we think, is pretty apt for the Annunciation, the welcoming of that Mary had in her heart for the Christ child. And we hope that all mothers will be able to give to their children in the womb. We know that you are all parish volunteers mostly. Some of you are diocesan volunteers or ministry leaders. We're so grateful you could be here. And we know how much the church needs your specific, particular gifts and abilities. So thank you for offering yourself, your talents, your heart, your time to the church and to the pro-life ministry especially. So we have a lot of tools for you today. We're going to try to give you all the tools you need to hit the ground running on a few different potential projects. We do not expect you to necessarily do all of the things that we suggest in this webinar. It is really just a baseline to give you an idea of what is out there and different opportunities to kind of see maybe what other pro-life ministries are doing in the church, and that we have provided the tools for you to do as well. So feel free to take it with a grain of salt and adapt it to your particular parish and your particular needs in your community, because obviously every parish is different, everyone is different. So don't feel bad if you can't do all of it. Even just a little bit is great. So to give you an overview of what we are doing today. We are going to be talking about the St. Joseph Adoption Novena. We'll be going into the anniversary of Evangelium vitae, the encyclical, the Gospel of Life by Pope St. John Paul II, which the anniversary is March 25th of the publication of that encyclical. We're going to talk about Walking with Moms in Need, which is our year of service for pregnant and parenting women that parishes can do. We'll go through the action guide again for the Solemnity of the Annunciation, and then we'll have a little time for Q&A. And again, if you have any questions throughout this webinar, just put them right in the chat box, and we will try to get to as many as we can. If for some reason we don't get to your question, you can just type in prolife@usccb.org and send us an email. And I think that's it.
Great, thanks, Kat. Okay. So the first thing we're going to go over is the St. Joseph Adoption Novena. Kat, I think maybe your mic might still be on. Oh, so this novena is available. Basically, it is something we put together a few years ago, and we're going to run it again, this time in the style of 9 Days for Life, in the sense of people will be able to sign up to receive it by email or by text message. We're still figuring out all the specific logistics, but I think what we'll do is have the emails all go out in English with a link to the Spanish, and then we'll have the text messages still remain in English and Spanish separately. So it's a novena for kind of all the different people who are on the path, of adoption in various ways. So the mothers who are considering placing their children for adoption, the children who themselves are awaiting adoption, the children who have been adopted, family members of, both the adoptive and the biological families. So it just kind of covers everyone. Every day has a scripture passage, just short, that can be reflected upon briefly, and then prayer following that after a moment of reflection, and also a petition to St. Joseph, and then you conclude each day with an Our Father, a Hail Mary, and a Glory Be. And we'll be running that leading up to the Solemnity of St. Joseph. So starting Wednesday, March 10th through Thursday, March 18th. And the main landing page for the novena, where you can get the resources and access the novena itself, is usccb.org/adoption novena. And then we also have a number of resources for parishes, specifically. So, and aside from signing up individually, we're doing the same thing similarly as with 9 Days for Life, where we've got the novena in a variety of formats. You can print it out. There's Word documents. We've got graphics like the one you can see on your screen here, and then also some sample announcements that you can use for your bulletin or your newsletters or different things like that. And we have to actually create the sign up form, so that'll be posted this week for sure, within the next day or two. So if you can't see where to sign up for the novena, that's why. And then we are also again partnering with Flocknote. So if your parish or diocese has a Flocknote account, what we're doing is we're, again, same thing as with 9 Days for Life. We're creating a series of email messages and then text messages as well. And then they'll put those in the Flocknote library, and then parishes or anyone with a Flocknote account can then go into the library and download all of those. They're all, pre-formatted, but they're also editable if you do want to make any changes, like add your parish banner or something like that. And then once you do that, we already have them, we'll have them scheduled. So I think that at that point they're ready to go, although I have to admit that I'm not totally sure. And so I would just check with your own account and make sure that all the messages are in fact scheduled automatically. I think they are, but if you have any questions, Flocknote customer service will be able to help you with that. Okay, so that's it for the St. Joseph Adoption Novena for now. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A function at any point throughout the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer them in the last 15 or so minutes of this presentation. So the next thing I want to cover is, as Kat mentioned before, the anniversary of John Paul II's encyclical Evangelium Vitae, which means the Gospel of Life in English. The anniversary of that encyclical being given by him in Rome is coming up March 25th. So he gave it very appropriately on the Solemnity of the Annunciation of the Lord. During our Respect Life program, or the materials we put out for Respect Life month, which really can be used any time throughout the year. The set we put out in last October, so 2020, focused a lot on this encyclical because it was the 25th anniversary last year. So we have a poster. The theme is Living the Gospel of Life. We have a number of bulletin inserts, so a reflection on that theme, as well as a brief summary of the Gospel of Life, and a bulletin insert talking about the connection between the Annunciation and the encyclical, and then also a bulletin insert talking about the connection, or really how Evangelium Vitae was the foundation for Walking with Moms in Need. And Kat can speak to that later when she talks about Walking with Moms in Need. So as you can see, we have a number of different graphics that you can use in your bulletins, in your newsletters, on your websites, the bulletin inserts that I covered. And then also what I'm excited about especially is recognizing that the encyclical is definitely one of the longer ones. We put together a compendium for the document. So it's basically, I compare it to a Cliff's Notes kind of version. So it's pretty substantial, but still much shorter than the document itself. And it just kind of summarizes paragraph by paragraph. And then accompanying that is a study guide. And this is just one example of there are 6 sessions, and so it's meant to be used with the compendium, but it could also be used with the document itself, with the whole document that John Paul II wrote. So we have, what's not shown here is a number of other sections, including there's a foreword, which just kind of introduces and gives the landscape for why John Paul II wrote the document, what it's trying to accomplish, what we can gain from it by reading it. There's a section for best practices, basically how to run a small group. This is one thing that would be really great to use, especially now as we're all still kind of dealing with the pandemic and under various levels of restrictions, and even just our own personal prudential judgment about safety, and for people who have higher risk levels and that kind of thing. So whether in person or virtual, this is definitely something that can be used in either situation. And then, I do just want to point out, we'll send you a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, as well as the links that we're talking about here. But just to let you know, the Gospel of Life resources can be found at these 2 web addresses, respectlife.org/gospel of life, and then respectlife.org/2020. And then with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kat to talk about Walking with Moms in Need and just kind of give you an overview of that. Kat, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So Walking with Moms in Need works really well in coordination with a lot of these Annunciation resources, and especially the Evangelium Vitae resources, because Evangelium Vitae and the 25th anniversary was probably the inspiration for Walking with Moms in Need. And in case you're not familiar with Walking with Moms in Need is a year of service where parishes walk in the shoes of pregnant and parenting women in their communities. And it is a way for them to identify what it's like to be a pregnant or parenting mom in need in their community, what is out there to serve women who are in need, and to kind of identify gaps in resources and how parishes can respond as a community in loving friendship to embrace women who are facing a challenging pregnancy. And it's a really great opportunity to do that in coordination with Evangelium vitae. So if we could just go to the next slide. As you can see, about a third of dioceses have already done this. So it's a great response, but we would love to see all dioceses doing this, walking with moms in need. So you can find most of the information about Walking with Moms at walkingwithmoms.com. We have tons of resources there. We have an action guide that goes in depth to all of the materials for Walking with Moms. And we have another separate webinar just on Walking with Moms. So I don't want to go too in depth, but I just did want to mention, since the Evangelium vitae anniversary is coming up, while technically Walking with Moms started on March 25th of last year in coordination with the EV anniversary, it is not too late to start Walking with Moms if you haven't yet. In fact, it would be a great opportunity to do it starting March 25th of this year if you could do that. Or you can even, create your own timeline. We have a separate timeline sort of suggested for you here for all the different phases, but you can also create your own timeline if you find that it's just too soon to start this in March. So we really hope that you will commit to doing Walking with Moms, because now more than ever, there are women facing challenging pregnancies, a lot of uncertainty because of the pandemic. So, and how that's affected the economy or people's opportunities or just increased fear generally. So it's a really awesome time to do this. And it's something that you can definitely do when ministry is mostly online. If your parish hasn't gone back to its regular schedule, this is something you can absolutely start just by sending emails, doing some Zoom meetings and moving forward on the year of service. And again, so the launch of Walking with Moms last year does not mean that Walking with Moms stops. This year, we hope it can kind of continue, especially if you haven't started yet, but even if you have, because the need is greater now more than ever. And I think I will send it back to you, Anne.
Thanks, Kat. Yeah, and just to again sort of highlight what Kat was talking about, that that the need is greater now more than ever, but it's also not meant to be a short-term response. So you don't have to feel like you have to do everything right now, but there are things that you can do right now as well, if that makes sense. Kat, help me out if I'm.
No, absolutely. And thank you for that clarification. And yes, it is not, Walking with Moms in Need happened to start at the time of the pandemic, although it had been planned long before that. We had not expected to launch Walking with Moms in Need during a time when the world was going to change so drastically. But this is meant to be a long-term response for pregnant and parenting women. You don't necessarily have to start or finish it now or get it done in a short time frame. It is something that's meant to be the beginning of a long process of parish engagement with pregnant and parenting moms and the resources that can serve them, including pregnancy health centers, Catholic clinics, food banks, etc.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit more, the earlier phases of Walking with Moms are especially conducive for beginning during the restrictions that many of us are still under. Actually, Kat, sorry, could you mute yourself? So a lot of this does take place within the parish, but like once we're back in person, but a lot of it can begin now, so you can start laying the groundwork now, get people familiar with it, start doing the research that's in the early phases. We definitely encourage creativity, Zoom meetings, everything that we've all become accustomed to. So yeah. Okay, so move on to talking about the Annunciation Parish Action Guide, and we'll spend the rest of our time pretty much here until our Q&A. So I just want to give you kind of an overview of the idea behind these action guides. So we have 6, and right now, and we're in the process of making them perennial. They were originally published as part of the 2019 Respect Life resources. And the idea is that of course, there's Respect Life Month in October, and there's a heavy emphasis on, Respect Life in January with the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and the Day of Prayer for the Legal Protection of Unborn Children. But there are also other moments throughout the year that are particularly suited for highlighting the gift of human life and encouraging respect for it, um, so that we can integrate the gospel of life really into the hearts and the rhythms of our faith, of parish life, and also recognizing that it is difficult, especially now more than ever, obviously, for people to come to things in person. And so we were trying to think, and it was, with the ideas and expertise of some of our diocesan directors for Respect Life Ministry, um, that we realized we have to really provide something that integrates the gospel of life where people are, which is, for regular for Catholics who regularly attend Mass, that's going to be at Mass. And so at least let's start with the parish and trying to build up that. And it's not that we don't want to also reach other people, but that if we equip and form and build up our parish communities, then hopefully we can be more equipped ourselves to then go out and conversations with families and friends and that sort of thing. So we identified several opportunities here, as you can see on the screen. Aside from January, now we're talking about March 25th, the Annunciation of the Lord. April, the Sunday of Divine Mercy, we focus usually on abortion healing. And May for Mother's Day, June and Father's Day for Father's Day, and October for Respect Life Month. And you can find the updated, like I said, we're in the process of updating those. The action guides for the Annunciation and for January can both be found at respectlife.org/action-guides. You can see that on the bottom of the slide here. And then if you want to look at the older versions, there's a link in the introduction on that page that takes you to the full 2019 resource guide, and that has all 5 from 2019 listed, just so you can kind of get an idea. But all of the action guides follow the same basic format. So there's an introduction, which kind of describes, what is this? Why is it important? What's in the action guide, the different materials, where you can find the materials. And then there's a section called Simple Steps, which I'll show you a sample timeline of how to plan for and prepare for and then celebrate the occasion. Sample bulletin and pulpit announcements, intercessions, homily helps, and a sample activity. And that's in all the action guides, those components. So the first one, to cover briefly for the Annunciation, the steps are, and this is kind of a simple layout. If the timeline takes from the simple steps and then expands upon it in a more detailed way, and adds in other things that you could do as well. So the simple steps is kind of a quick, if you're not really able to do the full version, consider maybe one or all of these steps. So prepare through prayer, reach out to parents who are expecting a child, educate and celebrate, and pray for expectant parents and unborn children. And then it gives you specific ways you can do all these 4 things. So for example, here we have the suggestion to use the Novena for the Annunciation, a heart open to God's will. That can be found, everything that is referenced in the action guide can be found at that website I mentioned earlier, respectlife.org/action-guides. And so it's linked in the guide itself, as you can see, and then it's also on that webpage. But that can be purchased through the USCCB store, or you can find it on our webpage online. And there's permission noted at the bottom of that page for how you can reproduce content from it. So you could take in the text and then put it elsewhere, like in your bulletin, newsletters, that kind of thing, just with the appropriate attribution as listed on the website. And then reach out to parents expecting a child. a few years ago, maybe 10 or so, we were able to develop and produce and get approval from the Vatican for a blessing of a child in the womb. And so the Annunciation is a great time to be able to do that. So it can be done either within or without the context of the Mass. And you could do something like, there are sample announcements later on I'll show you, where it announces that, hey, we're having this blessing. If you're expecting a child, you're welcome to come forward at next Sunday at the 11 o'clock Mass, for example. Or if you want to make sure that there will be expectant parents present when you do the blessing, you could ask people to RSVP, and then through that confirm who will be there, and prepare for the appropriate safety precautions and all that sort of thing. And then with I'm gonna move on here with educate and celebrate. You can see that this is the Annunciation and connection with the Gospel of Life bulletin insert that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And so that just is this one pager. You can see you're welcome to print it. We've got it in English and Spanish. We also have a Word version, Microsoft Word. If for some reason you need it to be formatted a little bit differently, that's fine. We just ask that you not change the text or anything like that. And you can see here's a copy. The rite for the blessing of a child in the womb is available as a PDF on our website for free. However, you can also download it if you prefer to have a hardbound copy. And then pray for expectant parents and unborn children. I'll just go back to that here. We've got the sample intercessions and a couple suggestions for how those could be used, in the prayer of the faithful, with your family at, meal times or before bed. Just a couple ideas. And then we really do want to know, if and how these materials are being used, so that we know whether they're helpful and whether we need to make changes, or is there something that was especially helpful we should be doing more of with the Annunciation, or really any occasion. Is there something that really you didn't find to be that useful, or did you wish that you had something that isn't currently provided? So please do email us, let us know if and how you use the materials. And then you can also tag us on Facebook, USCCB Respect Life, or on Twitter at USCCB Pro Life. Let us know what you're doing, and if it's possible, we're happy to highlight different things happening around the country in parishes and dioceses. Okay, so then moving on to the next component, we have our sample timeline. And in a nutshell, I would say, like, some of the most important things here are what's listed to the left. Connect with your pastor and your parish staff if you yourself are not parish staff. Complete the bulletin submissions, and then make sure that everybody has the materials that they need to be able to celebrate the occasion. So it starts out with suggestions for, okay, in early February, visit our website, see what materials are available, take a look at them. Again, you do not have to do everything. This is really just to make your lives easier, not prescriptive in the sense of must follow this exactly step by step in this specific way. If something doesn't work for you, change it, do it differently. Edit the announcements. This is really here just to be a helpful resource. If you do only one thing, you ask your pastor to include some of the intercessions in the prayer of the faithful, and that's all that happens. Praise God. Something is happening for the Gospel of Life. So really, it is not meant to be overwhelming. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll be providing it to you so you can have it for a reference for as long as you like. Maybe one year you do one thing, and then another year you do something else, or something in addition to the first thing. So really, just want to provide that note of encouragement. So this just, the sample timeline kind of walks you through a little bit more in depth of what you could do for the Annunciation beyond the simple steps that we just covered. And then going on to the sample announcements, you can see here there are two different sets. Well, it's broken down in several ways. So there's the bulletin announcements, the pulpit announcements. There are announcements for the Annunciation Novena and for the blessing of a child in the womb, and then we offer them in varying lengths to try to hit, whatever requirements you have. So we suggest what dates you can use them, the weekend before the novena, the weekend before the blessing, and again, adapt as needed. These ones you are absolutely free to edit. It's more the things like the bulletin inserts that we ask you to just keep that text, the same. You can quote from it, but just don't rewrite it. And then the next thing are the sample intercessions. Like I mentioned, these can be put in the prayer of the faithful. You could put one in the bulletin each week of March to raise awareness about the feast. You could put them in any parish communications you have. If you want to, take the text and then put it onto a pretty picture. Just make sure that you follow whatever diocesan or parish policies there are for using stock photos that you have the permission to use. Or again, you can put them in a newsletter that you have. So sky's the limit. And then next we have the homily helps. We developed just a short section right here of, asking your priest to include an announcement for the Annunciation, for the blessing of the child in the womb, the Sunday prior to the solemnity. And then sort of a little bit more in depth for the readings of the Annunciation itself, we provide some thoughts and notes, and they're largely based on the reflections of Pope John Paul II at the end of Evangelium vitae. Excuse me, just one second. And then, one thing before I go on with the homily notes, just like with everything else that we're providing, your priest is absolutely more than welcome to adapt and maybe use one paragraph from the homily notes, or he can use the whole thing if that's helpful to him. So he can use as much or as little and adapt or edit. We're not asking for attribution for these notes other than to John Paul II for Evangelium vitae. And then the last component in the Annunciation Action Guide is the sample activity. So for this action guide, the Annunciation, it's the blessing of a child in the womb, and it kind of gives you an explanation here. And then, as with all the other action guides, we'll list the materials that you need. So for this one, it's really just a copy of the blessing itself, and then whatever you want to add to that, and then directions for how you can do that. So, contact your pastor, contact your parish staff. If your pastor, to ask for permission if he agrees. Make sure that he gets the materials that he needs. Ask him whether he wants the hardbound copy or the electronic version. Maybe he wants both. And then put in place the plans for announcing it. Again, you might want to consider asking for RSVPs, especially during the pandemic when everything is so much more in flux. And then as with anything that we do in service to the church, ask what you can do to help. I know that I remember we had I was listening into a priest panel on cultivating the gospel of life and respect life ministry in parishes. And one of the things they mentioned is that they're more than happy to have something happen, but a lot of times they're just stretched really thin. And so if somebody is there to take the lead, they're happy to give their permission. It's just logistically they're kind of constrained by time. And I know that's not the case in all situations, but just to emphasize that's where it's possible to offer to do things and to help. That can go a long way. Okay, so where can you find all these things? So if you go to, at least for the action guide, if you go to respectlife.org and then scroll down the page, you'll see these two boxes, and you want to click the button that says action guide, and that will take you to the portion on respectlife.org/action guides directly, that goes to the everything here that we're talking about with the Annunciation. So this will take you to the files for the action guide that I just showed you the different screenshots of. Here we had register for this webinar. We'll put the recording here once we have it available. this week within the next few days. And then we have the additional resources that were mentioned throughout the actual action guide. So this is the Novena, A Heart Open to God's Will. This is where you can get the blessing of the child in the womb. This is the bulletin insert. So everything's just right there all in one spot for you. And then if you click these buttons, you will be taken to where all the files live. So if you want the whole action guide all in one file, you can get it here. This is the PDF. If you need it in a Microsoft Word document for some reason, you can get it here. And then these are the individual components broken down into their own files so that, for example, if you want to send the intercessions to the person in charge of organizing those for the Prayer of the Faithful, you can just send them this one PDF. They don't have to go searching for something. Similar to the homily helps, if your priest wants you to send him the homily helps, you could just send him that one PDF. And it has its own link as well, so you could just send the link. We have known that some people have found PDF links on our website to be difficult, so you can also download it as an attachment if you want to be super sure that he gets it. So we are coming up on our time, but yeah, that's all I have. And then we can just to quickly review the Q&A. Again, look for the little Q&A icon in the bottom of your screen, either in the center or the bottom right. Select all panelists, type in your question, and then hit enter. And that's all I have. So Kat, I have not been watching the Q&A because I cannot multitask to save my life, but I'll stop sharing this.
Great. All right, so it's Q&A time. Thank you all for your fabulous questions. I've been trying to respond to some of them. We noticed that a few of them are just links to the websites that you're looking for. We will try to get you a list as soon as possible. I've been keeping note of the different websites you've asked for. A lot of them I've already responded to in the chat, but we'll get you a separate list just of the websites that have all this content on them that we've mentioned. One person asked, and this is a great question, about corresponding advocacy. So pretty much all of the action guides and activities we've suggested today are very pastoral in nature. Absolutely, the USCCB Respect Life office also does advocacy alerts and action alerts and things like that. And you can find that all at respectlife.org by signing up for Respect Life Prayer in Action. So that's where you could find maybe the advocacy part of some of the work we do. When it comes to Walking with Moms, all the information you're looking for Walking with Moms is on its own separate website, which is www.walkingwithmoms.com. And we highly suggest, if you are interested in Walking with Moms, which is awesome, to read our short action guide first, because that has an overview. It explains everything that there is to know about Walking with Moms, what it is, how to do it, how to start it, and we'll address a lot of your questions. And then if you're curious to know more, we have a much more extensive action guide, which soup to nuts gives you absolutely everything you could want to know about Walking with Moms and all the materials you can use. We have a webinar explaining that action guide, which I put the link to in the chat too. So hopefully that will answer a lot of your questions about those particular initiatives. Someone has asked about, which is a specific question for Walking with Moms, what do I do if I've reached out to my pastor and he hasn't gotten back to me, or we're just in limbo praying for him to agree to do this? I think that's a great question. I believe in the Walking with Moms action guide, and we talked about ways to interact with your pastor about this, and specifically how to present it to them in a way that they're more likely to accept. We found that a key way to get pastors on board with Walking with Moms, or frankly with any of these suggestions that we are throwing at you today, is to explain that you're there, you're willing to help this, to lead on this to a certain extent, and you have other people in your parish who want to do this as well, and that you're all committed, and really that all he needs to do is kind of give you the go-ahead, and then you'll take care of it. I think the other key thing to explain is that Walking with Moms in Need is strictly a pastoral way of supporting women and pregnant and parenting women who are in pretty bad circumstances. This is not an advocacy initiative. This is not a way of praying for an end to abortion or anything like that. Walking with Moms really is just about serving low-income women in the community. And so we found that it's definitely a bridge builder, even when working with pastors who are kind of more skittish about abortion related work. So we hope that when you kind of present it that way, that maybe you'll have a response that is more favorable to starting Walking with Moms at your parish. All right.
A couple here I just want to note quickly. Someone was asking whether the slides will be available. Yes, we are happy to provide those, and we can email those out when we send you the recording. Somebody else was asking what Flocknote is. Flocknote is a messaging service and platform and database sort of software program. You can just look for flocknote.com, flocknote.com. We don't run it. We're just, they're very graciously allowing us to provide content for their users to be able to distribute. So I can't tell you a whole lot more than that. It's its own company. Some people were also asking, somebody said, let's see here. Sorry, I lost my other questions. It's moving around on me. Somebody was asking, will these materials be available to participants in hard copy? Most of these are digital only. And there are a few things that are in print. The poster for this year with the theme, a sort of like a resource summary of the different things that are available. Those can be found on respectlife.org/2020, and you could order from there. But most of the materials that we produce are digital.
We had a couple questions about the. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Okay. We had a couple questions about the St. Joseph's Novena. One is that is it for just couples who are currently planning on adopting who do this novena? The answer to that is no. We hope everyone will do this novena. It's something that we should all, I hope we all have a heart for adoption, for parents who are seeking to adopt a child, for birth mothers who are making an adoption plan for their child. You know, they need our prayers. We need to encourage adoption in the church. So we really hope that everyone will pray this novena, and we encourage that for everyone to participate. And to that end, we also, another question, we do have it available in Spanish. So all of the materials we've mentioned today, I believe, not only for the St. Joseph's Novena, but for the Annunciation, for Walking with Moms, certainly, are also available in Spanish. And they should, you should be able to find everything you need in Spanish too.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, I'm sorry, Kat, I was looking through your questions, so I'm sorry if you've already said this, but the intentions for the adoption novena do vary. So really, it's for anyone to pray. It's for there is an intention. There is one day that focuses on couples pursuing adoption, but it's just praying for everybody who is touched by adoption. So it's a journey that affects many people.
Absolutely. And also, just someone had asked about fathers. That's a question we get a lot with Walking with Moms in Need, because it is focused on mothers. St. Joseph's Novena is a way that we really do try to bring fathers into it. And obviously, St. Joseph being such an example of holy fatherhood, adoptive fatherhood. So that is one way we try to do that. And one of our intentions, at least, I think, is directed towards adoptive fathers. Right. Any other questions we see? Tammy has asked, if a community already has established agencies to assist moms in need, how do you suggest the church offer more spiritual aid and support? That's a fantastic question. We highly encourage you to read the Walking with Moms Action Guide, because what we see there in doing the inventory and examining what services an area has, you might find that there is a lack of prayer support, maybe like an Elizabeth ministry or other prayer supports for pregnant women or parenting women or women who've experienced loss. We have all kinds of resources as a church to be able to spiritually offer support, and that could be one way that your parish does Walking with Moms in Need, is by having more of a spiritual basis of, so maybe small groups, maybe inviting more local women in your community to prayer. And that could be one way that you do that. also Walking with Moms is not just about providing resources or, you know, doing all the work that a pregnancy care center would do or Catholic Charities would do, but it's linking up with pregnancy resource centers and Catholic Charities so that everyone in your parish knows where to refer a pregnant or parenting woman in need. Because maybe, even though the resources are out there, maybe the average person in the pews doesn't know about it. Maybe the person in the pew has a sister who's facing a challenging pregnancy, or a coworker who is, and who might be considering abortion even. And so for her to be able to know about these resources is great. And for the local church to be able to publicize these resources might be their way of contributing to support for women in the community.
There's another couple people were asking about the St. Joseph Novena in whether it's in Spanish. And I do just want to note that we try to produce pretty much everything in both English and Spanish. There are some exceptions. But yeah, I know Kat had mentioned that we do have that in Spanish. The 9 Days for Life Novena is in Spanish. The Annunciation Novena, the Annunciation Bulletin insert. So pretty much everything is available in both English and Spanish. But if you do have any specific questions, if you can't find something, feel free to email us at prolife. It's just all one word, not hyphenated, prolife@usccb.org. And then somebody else raised a suggestion that I thought was really fantastic for the blessing of a child in the womb. So I just want to share that. They said their priest gave a blessing after one of the masses for expecting mothers in a side chapel because some people wanted the blessing but were not ready to let everyone in the church know they were pregnant. So if you have a situation where you want to encourage privacy, that could be an option. So Kat, looks like you have more questions to answer.
No, I agree. I think that's a fantastic suggestion. One question that I love from Nancy McGrath, thank you for asking this, is there any way for people to share the results they see or experience with the use of these resources and evaluation what works best? We have given out surveys for Walking with Moms in the past, usually to diocesan directors, but frankly, we would just love your anecdotal sharing of what you've benefited from, or what you might need more of or less of, or what's been helpful to you. So please reach out to us at prolife@usccb.org. One other way we try to share success stories from Walking with Moms or from other Respect Life projects is via our social media pages. So we have USCCB Respect Life Facebook and Twitter, and we have a Walking with Moms Instagram. So that's one way where we try to share the things that have worked well in different parishes and different communities. So those are all ways we hope to get the word out about what people are doing and what's working. But also on our end, on the back end, the service end, it would be great for you to share what your experiences have been using these resources. Because most of us, we sometimes put these resources out there based on the input of a lot of you. We don't always necessarily hear back as to what has been useful. So it would be great to know that, and we really encourage you to let us know how you use them and what the feedback has been. For other questions.
Okay, someone asked whether there are ways to help out that don't directly go through the parishes, and I would say absolutely. I would say the first thing is you can we just still review the materials. We did develop them with parishes in mind. However, we also developed them to be adaptable to a variety of circumstances. So for example, if teachers want to use, a lot of these ideas could be used in classroom settings. It's good for individual use, to go through maybe the Gospel of Life Compendium, the study guide yourself. Those can be used for individual use. And so then sort of similarly, if you have family or friends who want to go through that with you, you could certainly invite them to and maybe form your own small group. We have graphics and articles on respectlife.org that you can share on your social media accounts. I would encourage you to also follow us on social media. On Facebook, it's USCCB Respect Life. On Twitter, it's USCCB Pro-Life, and on Instagram, it's Walking with Moms. And Kat does a fantastic job curating and organizing and posting all that content. So you can always follow and share from our pages. And Kat, can you think of other ideas off the top of your head?
For sharing.
Well, for how they can put these resources to use outside of a parish context.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sorry. No, these are absolutely useful for ministry too. I mean, for people who work in education or with different parish groups, one thing that we've seen, especially with the pandemic, is that sometimes the volunteer base has changed in parishes because sometimes people who are elderly can't always do certain things. Maybe they're trying to do work from home, they're trying to do church from home because they are in a high risk category for COVID or something. So this would actually be wonderful for Catholic youth ministries to use and employ in some way to adapt to to that group, to see if they wanted to take the lead on some of these projects. And yeah, this is definitely meant to be used for all ministries, as well as, the Parish Respect Life Ministry.
Thanks, Kat. Do you want to address a question? So I'm going to put this in, I'll hopefully set it so that everyone can see. Okay, so I've just sent a link, usccb.org/resources 2019 Respect Life Guide. That has all the originally published action guides. So those have specific dates to the 2019-2020 cycle. However, so the January and Annunciation guides are both updated and ready, to be used, or they can be. The January one is now perennial, so that can be used anytime. The Annunciation one has also just been updated and can be used anytime, so this year or following years. And then we're in the process of updating the rest of them as quickly as possible so that those are also ready to be used this and continuing years. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is in the 2019 resource guide, if you want to take a look now, the action guide for Mother's Day, somebody was asking how we respond to highlighting days that could be painful for those who have a painful association with the occasion. So in the Mother's Day action guide, the homily notes are really more, those ones are a little bit different, where it's not as much talking about the readings of the day. It's more just considerations for that. And that's on page 50 of that big PDF. I put a link in the Q&A for. And we can put that also in the email that we'll send out after this within the next few days. So just considerations like, just things to be aware of, how to talk about it. On the one hand, like, it's still a gift, motherhood, having a child, that's still a gift to be celebrated, and we should. But also to be aware that it can be a painful occasion for people. So to be sensitive, to that as well. So there are more considerations laid out in there too.
Just time maybe for one more question. I noticed that someone had asked about whether the Annunciation picture is able to be replicated and using their materials from our, Annunciation materials. And do you have any information on that?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Sure. Someone had asked about the Annunciation picture, being able to use that in their materials.
Okay, so unfortunately, we cannot give permission to use the photos that we use in our materials, because while we pay for the license as extensive as possible, we're not legally able to give that permission. It would have to be derived from the original source. So I'm not sure which, if you're talking about the one on the intercessions page of the action guide or the front of the Novena. But you can email, if you have more specific questions, I'm happy to answer by email. So just email prolife@usccb.org. But in general, we unfortunately can't allow people to reuse pictures that we've used, because we only have the legal rights to use them in our own materials rather than to give permission for others. However, sorry, there are some Creative Commons avenues, like museums will have sacred art sometimes that can be used for free, as is the case for this year's poster. And we chose that image largely so that people could use that image and edit it because it's in the common domain.
One more quick question from Patricia Brody. Yes, the Walking with Moms Need initiative is meant to be a continuing initiative, and we will, in our list of links that we're going to send all of you after this webinar, we will include a link to the updated timelines list, because we initially conceived Walking with Moms in Need to start on the anniversary of Evangelium vitae. We did not predict a post-pandemic world. So that has changed reality, parish life for a lot of people. So that being said, we absolutely want people to do this and to pursue Walking with Moms, especially now when so many women are in need. So we will give you the updated timelines. It is not too late to start if you haven't even thought of starting it yet. It's not too late. You can come up with your own timeline, do all the phases, and complete the year of service on your own time.
Okay, and we have, where did it go? Well, basically there was one more slide, but technical difficulties. Basically just, again, review the information, decide what, prayerfully try to decide what you want to ask your pastor for permission to do, and then move forward with confidence and connect with your pastor and set up a meeting with him and the parish staff. We will, again, be sending out an email with the recording, as well as the links that we've mentioned throughout this webinar. And any other questions, you can email us at prolife@ucc.org. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. And let's just close with a prayer. Thank you all
Yes.
for being here. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Take care, guys. Thank you so much for being here. God bless you in all your work.